Very good. We're continuing learning the SIcha of the Rebbe that the Rebbe said in the first year that he was Rebbe, the first time that he was Rebbe in Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz. And the Rebbe is talking about the importance, first of all, the greatness of the previous Rebbe and how the previous Rebbe really was under control of the whole situation. And there was tremendous self-sacrifice. And now the Rebbe says that we also have to be the pupils in the yeshivas. They have to leave for a couple of weeks and go out and spread Judaism. Knock on doors, go to other cities, or even in their city, go to places where people don't know anything about Judaism and spend their time talking to other people. What exactly should they say? We'll talk about that in a second. I said the Rebbe, 1 second, the whole idea of young people is supposed to be to sit and learn Torah. That's what they're doing. There's not enough people learning Torah. Why send people out into the streets and into the cities, into the countrysides, and to strange places to talk about Torah? And it says, well, it says, a pasuk, it says, tzedakah v'tzedakah terumam goy. It says that charity elevates a nation. Mikan Rabbeinu Zak in Torah Or says, the first Rebbe says in the beginning of the book Torah Or, that by means of charity, physical charity, to go and do another person a favor, to enliven somebody, even a spiritual favor, to give somebody physical bread, the physical water that they're hungry or thirsty. Al derech says similarly, spiritual charity, to enliven those people who are hungry for Torah. Every Jew wants the Torah. Every Jew. That's what makes a Jew a Jew. What's the difference between the Jews and everybody else? What's the difference between the Jews and the people from Scotland or for England or for those people? Those people also are intelligent and they're talented and there's, they're businessmen. And what's the big difference between the Jews and everybody else? The Torah. That's what our identity is. And that's what's been keeping us going for all these thousands of years that everybody's been trying to destroy us. And that's the bread of the Jewish people. That the Torah is compared to bread and to water, like it says, it's lachmi. It says the water is also like the Torah, mayim chayim, the Torah. And also the commandments. The commandments also, that's also eating and drinking in different places. By means of learning Torah and doing the commandments, as it makes a person's mind, and I'm sorry, it makes a Jew stronger. But if you give the charity and you convince other people to strengthen their Judaism, you're giving them charity, you're enlivening their Jewish soul. So the charity that you're giving, that makes your mind of the giver and your heart, it says, it makes it 1,000 times, increases your it refines your heart and your mind 1,000 times. That's what it says. So in other words, learning Torah is very wonderful, but if you really want to have a big increase in learning Torah, is you give charity, and especially charity by encouraging others to learn or to do the commandments. The Rebbe, the fourth Rebbe of Chabad, he explains like this: Elef b'nei adam nichnasim lemikra. It says 1,000 people, 1,000 people can come into the yeshiva to learn the Torah, and only one of them comes out to be an actual rabbi that he can tell people what to do. That's what it means. 1,000 people. Hu shenasa ru'ei lahara. It means that that one person from 1,000, only one becomes fit to be a rabbi. So in other words, so it's 1 out of 1,000. If you could increase the results by 1,000, it would be that 1,000 went in to learn Torah, and 1,000 came out learning Torah, came to be rabbis. That's increasing 1,000 times. As it is usually only, what is it, 1%, point, what is it? How does it go? 0.1%, 1,000th would come out to be rabbis. It says if you go out and you spread Judaism, it says that increases your heart and your mind 1,000 times. In other words, instead of 1,000 people learning and only one becoming a rabbi, the results are increased 1,000 times. 1,000 people become rabbi. From this is understood that when one of the Talmudi yeshivas, when they go out of the yeshiva and spread Judaism in a spiritual way, which La'amid Yehudim B'Keren Ora, to stand up the Judaism of Jews, Torah mitzvahs, not only she'en ze ibud zaman, it's not just a waste of time from learning Torah, exactly the opposite. This actually increases their success in learning. And when they come back to the yeshiva, it says they'll be 1,000 times better, whether in using their time, utilizing their time, or whether in the quality of learning that comes out. They'll be successful in understanding the truth of the matter. Like it says, to learn Torah according to the law. And I think this is a very important thing. There's an idea that a person can learn the Torah and come to the wrong conclusions. A person can learn the Torah and come to totally the wrong conclusions. So we have a couple of very terrible stories. You know, this Sunday is going to be Yud Zayin Tammuz. It's a fast day. And what happened on Yud Zayin Tammuz? There were several tragedies that happened. They say there were 5 tragedies that happened. But one of the tragedies was that was the day that Moses broke the tablets. Moses broke the tablets. Well, there was about something like 500 years later, right in the beginning of the first temple, there was a person called Yerovam ben Nevat, and he was a tremendously genius person. There was nobody like him. It says that he learned the Torah, he understood in a way that said that everybody else, all the other wise men of the generation, were like chaff. You know, like it says like klipat hashum, like the little covering on a piece of garlic. They were all like nothing. And suddenly he knew everything. And suddenly he got this crazy idea. He became the king, and he got this crazy idea that he didn't want his people to go down to the holy temple. The kingdom split. He took what's called the upper 10 tribes, and there was anyway, he took 10 tribes, and he didn't want the people to go to basically. So he built 2 golden calves. 2 golden calves, and the Jewish people worshiped the golden calves for the whole time that the kingdom of Israel was in existence, which was like about 250 years, something like that. 250. And what does it mean? It's possible to learn the Torah and not to have a blessing, to come to totally the wrong conclusions, to build a golden calf. It's possible to do. So we've seen other examples also. There's the whole Christianity is just based on false interpretations of the Torah. And there were people in that religion, the popes and things, they knew all the Gemaras, they knew everything. Right? But they came to totally the wrong conclusion and twisted everything around. So the Rebbe, it's a big blessing if a person learns the Torah and he gets the ideas, he utilizes the ideas properly. And it's a big blessing. So one of the ways to assure that you get this is by giving charity, by going out and encouraging other Jews to learn Torah, do the commandments, be more genuinely Jewish. But that we said before about the Jews, that they should go, that Jews that you meet when you go out to spread Judaism. So it's understood that each place is different and each person is different. You can't just have one common statement that you say to everybody or one common thing. You want to enter people into conversations. You want to talk to them about something genuine. We're not trying to convince them, to buy insurance or something like that. Insurance is very nice, but that we're not convincing. We're convincing them to be who they really are. But on the other hand, everybody really is a little bit different. It says that everybody's fingerprints are different, everybody's faces are different. And it says that everyone's personalities are different. So you have to know that even though everybody has to be treated differently, but there's general principles going on over here. What to say to people when you go out to spread Judaism. So it says you have to know that the main thing is to arouse. What's the goal? To arouse and to bring a person to fear God. Yirat Shamayim. What does it mean, fearing God? Fearing God, not fearing punishment. We're talking about fearing God. To be afraid of doing what's wrong. All the time they come out with, I remember when I was young, smoking in America was the most, how do you say, manly, healthy, popular thing. Not only manly, it's like an individual, I mean, in all the movies, somebody smoked, and the movie stars smoked, and everybody smoked, right? The president of the United States smoked, and this smoked, everyone was smoking, and they're smoking all the time. And you couldn't complain. If someone was smoking, you couldn't complain about a person smoking. You had to sort of go to a different place. You had to go to a non-smoker zone or something. And then eventually they started realizing, hey, smoking is killing you. So they started telling everybody, hey, it's not healthy to smoke. It's not healthy. It's not saying you're going to get a punishment if you smoke or something. Now I think there's punishments, but then it's simply not healthy to smoke. And they came up with these big campaigns and doctors. And at first there was opposition to these. And then it's the same thing. It's simply not healthy for a Jew spiritually not to do Torah and the commandments. It's not healthy for him. True, if a person does Torah and the commandments, it in a lot of ways presents him with more challenges. He can't work on Shabbos. He can't eat this. He can't do that. He can't marry whoever he wants to. It's going to be more difficult to get along in life. The food is more expensive and this is more expensive. But nevertheless, God takes care of you. Okay, but the fact of the matter is that it's healthier for a Jew to act like a Jew. Therefore, that's what it means, fearing heaven. Fearing heaven means not to do something which is detrimental to yourself, and letting everybody know that this thing, for a Jew not to do Torah and mitzvahs, is detrimental to your Jewish health. It separates you from God. That's what it means, Yirat Shamayim. That you don't want to do anything that's against God because it's against God, not because of what's going to happen to you. It says that's the main thing. In other words, again, what is Yirat Shamayim? Yirat Shamayim means you can't do what you want. It could be that by doing what you want, that you're doing the wrong thing. There's right and there's wrong. So it's the idea is to get people convinced how good Hashem is and what they're missing by not doing what he wants. That's the whole purpose of Torah and mitzvahs. Like it says, V'tzivenu, that God commanded us to do all these commandments in order what? L'yirat Hashem, just to have fear of God. When you get into your car and you drive, so and that's it. You can go faster and you can go to new places. But the main thing is the underlying current in driving is fear. What do you mean by fear? A healthy fear. First of all, take lessons how to drive. Right. Second of all, you have to know where the brakes are. You have to know to drive on the right side of the road. Right. And if you're in England, you don't drive over here. That's the underlying current when you're driving a car, is not to do something wrong. And then when you got that right, and you're sure you're not going to drive on the wrong side of the road, and you're not going to switch lanes without any to endanger yourself, because a car is a very dangerous thing. Very dangerous thing. And you don't want to hit a pedestrian with it. You have that basic awe of the potential of going wrong, doing something that's wrong. Then after that, you can drive. Then after that, you have to know where you're going, and you have to have gas in the car. And Shazui, this is the whole essence of doing Torah and mitzvahs, is to be aware of God. In other words, what are we saying? When there's something that's bigger than us, in the case of smoking or driving your car, it's called life. You don't want to mess with life. Right? Smoking is not a good, right? Life does not belong to you. It's a gift, precious, amazing gift. Therefore, you should preserve it. Be afraid of losing it. That's a healthy type of a fear. Right? You don't stick your hand into fire, and you don't take all sorts of bad drugs, and you don't jump off of cliffs. That's a basic thing in life. That's the basic thing. Says the Rebbe, with godliness, though, God is the source of all life. The more you recognize the greatness of Hashem, the more valuable it is. More valuable, right? Somebody gives you a gift, you win the lottery of $1 million. It's very nice. You win the lottery $20 million, $50 million. Then I can't keep this in my house. You're afraid. It's so valuable. The more valuable it is, the more afraid you are of losing it. That's a healthy thing. It says that's what we're trying to do, is get people to realize how precious and good Hashem is, and how necessary it is to do what he wants. Do what he wants. If life is important, the source of life, how much more it's important. Like it says, Ani lo nivresi, I was not created. El l'shamash eskoni. The only reason we are created is in order to serve our owner, which is God. Like servants that serve the master not in order to receive reward. We don't care about any reward. Just the idea to be close to the king, to be serving the king. But if you go in front of the king and you act like a normal person, you answer your cellular phone and say, just a second, Your Majesty, I have a phone call over here. Oh, yeah, I forgot to talk to my wife. You don't do that in front of the king. Why not? Because the king is a different type of a person. The same thing, God. God is a different type of a being. He creates all being, and he creates you. He's infinitely far from us and infinitely close to us. That's the purpose of going out, is that people will recognize that there is a creator, that there is a king of the universe. That's what it says, not you should serve God not in order to receive reward. We're not going around and selling people they're going to go to heaven and they're going to avoid going to hell. This is not even a motivation. I mean, if you have to use that, if that's the only motivation that works, that you do, but that's certainly not to tell them if it works on you, but not to go to other people. Almanas the Kabul Pras, because you're supposed to recognize the creator. It's not just that you think about yourself all the time and you want to receive rewards, no matter what reward it is in this world or the next world, and the things that are higher than this, because the whole thing is that there's nothing more valuable and meaningful than serving the creator of the universe. And that's what you're going around telling people. That's what you're going around telling people. But of course, people don't understand this. So what's the goal? The goal is to be an example. You tell a person to do commandments, Jewish people, but the goal is to bring a person to recognize God, to recognize the creator, right? Not in a Kabbalistic way and this, because every Jew deep inside already recognizes it. Every Jew, all of a sudden, inside, he's very aware that there is a creator of the universe, there is a king of the universe. Every Jew knows that she is the son of God, the servant of God, the wife of God, the partner with God. More like we said before, there is a teaching to those people who, those people who are like the people who work in public, tzorchei tzibur, they call it. Be'ir zu or be'ir hasadeh b'niul mosdos chinuch. What about those Jews that have institutions, run institutions of education? Say it like this: when there is now the Rebbe is talking about yeshivas, right? People that have yeshivas. This is especially going to be in America. Okay, in America, it started off very small, but this problem is going to be a problem. Now the Rebbe went, as soon as he became Rebbe, before he became Rebbe, as soon as he arrived in America, the previous Rebbe made him the head of several institutions. And the Rebbe encouraged also that other Chabad people should make institutions, and they should, for teaching, especially for teaching children, for teaching older people, spreading out Judaism. Well, usually the way it works with an institution, if you happen to be the manager, that as soon as there's not enough money, you get into debt. So what do? You start to find ways to limit your expenses. You lay a few teachers off, you make the classes smaller in order that your expenses shouldn't be greater than your income. People have to, all these institutions, they depend on charity, most of them. So that's a natural way of doing business. You see the business is not bringing in money, so you find ways to cut corners. It's the same thing with the yeshiva. You find ways to cut corners. Says the Rebbe, you should know this is totally wrong. Maybe in business it's okay, but in institutions of learning, it certainly is not. You have to know, this is not the way of God. The way of God is Milin Bakodesh. You always have to increase. In holy things, you always have to increase. From once in a while, it says a person is put into a great test, a dilemma. We're talking about the ones who direct these institutions. It seems that there's a concealment, and that there's not enough income to cover the expenses. Even the way it is now, how are we going to increase the expenses? Certainly not to make them bigger. Says the Rebbe, no. Like every time that you're in a test, a difficulty, a God provides you with a challenge. Lo l'sim leiv la'alamos v'sterim. Don't pay any attention to the debts. El lamod b'kol hatokev, but you must be very strong that by means of this you can reveal the spark of God which is concealed inside of this test, and you can see that the test is really nothing. It's like it was zero. Not only that since that this spark of godliness, which is found in this challenge of your institution being in debt, because the challenge gets bigger and bigger, therefore you come lower and lower because the debt becomes greater and greater. After this, there will be a tremendous increase, says the Rebbe, above nature. But just like in every test or difficulty, you can't say, okay, I'm going to not pay any attention to the debts. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to make the yeshiva even bigger in order that God will be a miracle. Says, no, you can't do that. You can't do it in order that God is going to do you a miracle, because then when the miracle doesn't happen, so you'll give up. Ella, kafurish, like it says in the Ketuv, natate lerecha nes lisnoses. I gave those who fear you a flag to elevate. And the nes also refers to a flag. It also refers to a miracle, but it also refers to a nisayon. A nisayon means a test, a tribulation, a trial, a difficulty. Mipene koshet sela. Why do you do it for the sake of the truth? Koshet means truth. Mipene she'emetu ken, because that's the truth. He is not affected by these challenges because he knows that the challenge that a person has difficulties, that it goes, difficulties are against the will of God. They really don't exist at all. It says, the Rebbe used to bring it up all the time, that Abraham, when he went to sacrifice Yitzchak, so it says that he was going, there was a big wall of fire in front of him. You don't see that every day. So Abraham said, listen, God commanded me to go and sacrifice my son. And this wall, I don't know where it comes from, but maybe it's part of nature. And he just went straight and the wall went away. As soon as you realize that the tests are only, they don't really have any real existence. I mean, it's an easy thing to say, but it's a difficult thing to do. That's what makes it a test. Then then we receive the promise that says, Laman yechaltzu yededecha. That's what it says, in order to free your beloved one. God sends you this test in order to set you free. Then when you are freed from this difficulty, this test, this imprisonment, the debts, whatever they are, then you'll see that there really was nothing to it. Exactly the opposite, that it becomes tremendous successful. That's exactly what happened on this holiday. Yud Beis Yud Gimel Tammuz. The previous Rebbe was put into prison. It was a tremendous, difficult situation that he was in. He ended up not just losing money, but to lose his life and to lose the whole Chabad movement. But the Rebbe realized that there was nothing to it and he wasn't going to pay any attention. And he didn't. I mean, how can you not pay attention? These people, they killed 50 million people. How could it be? Okay. Okay, so what we say, so Abraham, the whole Judaism is not based on proofs of God. It's not based on miracles. It's not based on raising the dead or doing amazing things. The Judaism is based on Abraham. Abraham had 10 tests. None of these tests required a miracle or required any sort of superhuman powers, or it just required total determination on the part of Abraham and not to pay any attention to the terrible difficulties that he was put through. That's a test. In other words, a test basically in this case in Abraham is a proof that God doesn't exist. God doesn't care. God isn't powerful enough. Here, let's take this example. A person has an institution and all of a sudden it gets into debts and it gets bigger debts and the creditors are demanding their money. And you're just trying to do good. You have an institution where there's Torah, there's commandments, and you're trying to teach children. All of a sudden it gets debts and more debts. And people are getting mad, people are getting angry. So a normal thing what a person does is he says, okay, I'll get rid of a few of the teachers. I'll make the thing smaller. Says the Rebbe, that's not the way to do things. That's not the way Abraham did. That's not the way the previous Rebbe did. But it's a test. I mean, it's terrible. You know, people are calling me up. I can't sleep. Right? They're meeting on the streets. They're telling me that they need their money. And the people do need them. What am I supposed to do? So the Rebbe said, don't worry about it. God will take care of it. Just like God took care of Abraham, God took care of this. You have to keep going and doing your work. Go and look for money, etc., etc. But it's in the hands of God. Very difficult, terrible test, but that's what Judaism is. Right? If the Jews would have given into what I think I've said this a lot of times, but I'll say it again. I read somewhere, rivers and people become crooked, a river, by following the path of least resistance. In other words, a river flows and it meets up with a rock, so it goes around it. It meets a valley, so it goes underneath it. And it meets a tree, so it goes around, and it goes this. By not going straight, that's the nature of a river. You can't demand anything more than from a river. But people are the same thing. They meet somebody, so they start to lie, and then they start to trick, and then they start to cheat, and then they start to bluff, and they start to this, they steal, and here it says they even do things that are not harmful at first glance. They cower, they retreat. Says the Rebbe that this is not the way to run an institution, a Torah institution. Even more, this not only lozu bilvad after you find out what your yeshiva needs, you should, in order to continue functioning properly, forgetting about the debts that you're just building up debt. Says the Rebbe, not only should you not decrease your expenses, but even more, there's no way that you should think about limiting the expenses according to what you bring in. First of all, the Rebbe changed this a little bit. This was like in the 90s. The Rebbe just said do things and that. And then afterwards, the Rebbe said that I think that what happened was that people were just becoming irresponsible. They were becoming irresponsible, and they were building up debts, and that they didn't care about it. Here, the Rebbe is saying it's your responsibility. You can get money, but nevertheless, you should understand that the money is going to come, and that true, you shouldn't follow your nature by retreating, but also you shouldn't become, how do you say, insensitive. The Alfred E. Newman syndrome. What, me worry? Just to go. Things have to be done in a normal, regular way, not in a way of just being a spendthrift, just opening up without any sort of checking yourself at all. Well, back to Apikam, like the previous Rebbe said, but nevertheless, the whole main thing should be growing. That's the idea. That if you pay too much attention to the world, you will never grow. And that's what the Rebbe is demanding here, growth. Like the saying of the Rebbe Marash, the fourth Rebbe of Chabad, as his grandson, the previous Rebbe, said that he heard from his father in the name of the Alter Rebbe, Die Welt sagt es wenn men nit arunter, darf men ariber. The world says that if you have no other choice and you can't go below a thing, or you can't do any tricks, or you can't do this, then you have to just ignore all of the problems and jump over, right? People aren't allowing you to. People, they say you shouldn't do this, they shouldn't, right? Don't open such an institution because it's not going to work. Everybody's against you, and you try to go to the different, the different the branches of government and get money and get okays and get this and that, and you can't do it. So you've got no choice. You just have to close your eyes and just open that institution and just go and do it. Says that's what the people say. If you can't go under, you should go under. You should go over, jump over, forget about the problems. When Ichzag said the fourth Rebbe of Chabad, I say as midarf lecharchila riba. You have to, from the beginning, jump over. Don't consider any problems. Jump over. It doesn't mean to be wild and to just do things which make no sense whatsoever. You have to have a plan. But on the other hand, the plan should not be destroyed by by opposition, by unwarranted opposition. In other words, somebody's against what you're doing. Think about it. Take the advice. Think about where's this person coming from, and if this person is coming from a place where it's just small-headedness, so then don't pay any attention to it. You have to go through it. It's a wonderful way of thinking. The Rebbe, that's the whole Rebbe's life. That's what Judaism is. That's what the Rebbe's whole, if it wasn't for thinking that way, to make Chabad houses, how much opposition the Rebbe had, the previous Rebbe also had, to spreading out Judaism. Spreading out Judaism. In America, there was tremendous opposition to this. They thought that even just recently, I guess it's already 30 years ago, the Chabad decided to make Hanukkah menorahs everywhere, public Hanukkah menorahs. And the Reform and the Conservative were just berserk. They took the Chabad to court and it was forbidden. You couldn't do it. And it ended up that they lost. But they had the good lawyers and everything. Right? There was so much opposition. And that's just a simple example. The examples personally are even greater. So if you pay too much attention to opposition, then you're never going to get anything done. Says the Rebbe that if you know what you're doing is right, then don't pay any attention to the opposition at all. The way things go in the world is that by every normal person, that in the beginning he starts to think about how much he's going to make and how much he needs. And according to that, he makes a plan about what type of a business on paper. You sit down, you make a calculation how much you're going to need. How much money you have to have for this type of an expense. Not to have too much, we can't buy a machine like that because it's going to be too expensive. But if we're talking about, that's to make money in the world, that's the world of business. But if we're talking about doing what God wants, this is Torah and the commandments. Colossian Tanchum, like the Midrash Tanchum, Hayu mechabdim et mitzvah she'em shluchai. Says you have to honor the commandments because the commandments are my emissaries, says God. The commandments are God incarnate. So therefore, now this is a wholly different business. Right now, you have to realize this is what the Rebbe is saying. This is totally revolutionary. The Rebbe is now, he's not just giving advice, a good attitude. He's actually saying this is what you must do. He's telling the Hasidim, now these Hasidim, a lot of them, they're not businessmen. They sat and they learned Torah. Right? These people are not entrepreneurs. He's telling them now you have to go out and open up Chabad houses. You have to open up this. There wasn't Chabad houses yet, but you have to open up yeshivas and institutions. And in order to do that, you have to realize that you're now an emissary of the creator of the universe. And when you're doing things like that, you can't be so limited. And you can't worry so much. You can't think so much about how much am I going to make and how much money do I have on hand, and then I can open something up. This is the way of the opposite of what's supposed to be done. You can't put what's the most important, namely your success, below, and what's least important, namely the money, that's first. That's on the top. It has to be olam barur. It has to be clear. What's most important has to be on the top, namely spreading Torah and Judaism, and what's least important, namely the money, that has to be below. It has to be, but it has to be below. First of all, a person has to begin with the main thing, to think and to understand, right, how this institution should be conducted in a way that it will fulfill the will of Hashem like it's supposed to be, right? What is the way? The institution, you have to have teachers. They have to be qualified teachers, right? You have to have a building. It has to be a building that's in the right place. It has to be a building that's normal, that the children will enjoy going to. Then, but these are all, forget about the money, first of all. This has to be how much you have to expend money. And after you talk about how much money you have to spend, and after you start to do this, then think of ways how you can get this money. But don't do it the other way around. First of all, you make expenses, right? First of all, you think about how much money I can get, and then when you have the money on hand, then you start to work. No, it says in the Gemara, God said to the Jewish people, my sons, borrow from me and I will pay it back. That's all of the livelihood of a person is set from Rosh Hashanah. That's what we're learning in the Maimer in Batil on Sunday. We're learning Kuntras Amayan. All of the livelihood of a person is set from Rosh Hashanah. So if so, it's already there. Right, all the money is there, right? So you can't make any more than is set on Rosh Hashanah, right? Wrong. Everything is set on Rosh Hashanah, how much money you're going to get, except for expenses for Torah and the holidays and sending your children to learn Torah. She'im osif, that if you add, it's added to you. In other words, she'en litchashev afilu behaktzava shenikva milamayla. You shouldn't even think about what is already set for you in heaven. You believe in God. You believe the money comes from God, right? And you believe that on Rosh Hashanah was given a certain amount, and so you think, oh well, then I won't go beyond that amount. It says you're right. You shouldn't go beyond that amount, whatever it is for your personal needs. But when it comes to learning Torah, whatever you get into debt, God will repay. Elohu Balabayat. God is He's the Balabayat. God is He's the ruler. And He's really the owner of the whole entire world. And He can add on as much as you expend for learning Torah. God promises, I will pay it back. This is in general what the previous Rebbe said you have to do. This is what the previous Rebbe said you have to do. In general, the previous Rebbe gave testimony on himself that he was always in debt. And since he always tried to increase and enlarge the expenses in spreading out Torah without thinking about how much money he actually had. And because of this, was fulfilled what it said, that never did he ever go bankrupt. Since all the time, somehow or other, he received money. I'll just tell one story. Maybe you've seen the story. It was on GEM. GEM has all these in people, Jewish educational media. It's a Chabad organization. They interviewed a lot of very interesting people. They interviewed one person that he was, if I remember the story correctly, he was like the treasurer of a institution, a Torah institution that was in America before the previous Rebbe arrived. The previous Rebbe arrived in America was in 1940. And there were very few Torah institutions, but there were Torah institutions there. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was Torah Vadat. I'm thinking, but it was something like that. But it definitely was not a Chabad institution. It was not a Chabad institution. They weren't opposed to Chabad, even though that was sort of the spirit of the times, but they weren't opposed. So this institution, they got into tremendous debt, and they put an advertisement in the paper that would people please donate, because they were going to close, they had to have money for the building. And it didn't help. The Rebbe, so this person, this treasurer, he heard there was the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He was a very holy person. And he came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe to get a blessing. Right? Get a blessing. A blessing, one Jew blesses another Jew. It's what does it say? We just finished learning in the words of Bilam, whoever blesses you gets blessed. So the blessings of a Jew is a good thing. And even to bless another Jew is a good thing. So he went to the Rebbe to get a blessing. So he said that they needed whatever it is, $50,000. This is in 1940. $50,000 was a really large sum of money. I don't know how much is it. $1 million today or something. Anyway, a lot of money. So the Rebbe said, that's how much money you need, $50,000. He says, yes. So the Rebbe, whatever, anyway, the Rebbe gave him the money. Or he wrote him a check, whatever it is. He gave him the money. He had the money on hand. And the Rebbe said, I'm just asking you one thing, that you should pay me back as soon as you can. Of course, he didn't take any interest in it. He made him write a little note. I think they wrote a note, I owe you $50,000. He wrote, signed his name. I just request you should pay me back whenever you can. So the person telling the story, he said he was amazed. He knew that the Rebbe had just come from Russia, and that he himself was struggling. The Rebbe himself was struggling. He had his own institutions that he had to pay for. He had to pay teachers. And he said, you can be assured that I work day and night to pay the Rebbe back as soon as I possibly can. I could. He said, but I was amazed. So either he asked the Rebbe this, or the Rebbe, I think he said, he thanked the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, listen, in Russia where I was, the government closed down Torah institutions. Closed Torah institutions. It closed my Torah institutions. He said, I can't stand, here we're in America, there's not such opposition. I can't stand to see that a Torah institution is closed. I couldn't bear to see it. So he took from his own money, which meant it was risking his own institutions, wasn't he? But the Rebbe says, no, you don't make that calculation. The calculation is that you increase learning Torah and God will take care of the rest. The previous Rebbe said he was always a debtor. And also he promised that all the people that follow in his ways and that are his emissaries, that if they go in their ways, that it'll be by them also. That they'll always be in debt. And they should increase the debt. And then why? Because there's always going to be more expenses than income, because the whole purpose is not to make money. The purpose is to spread Judaism. But together with that, they will never go bankrupt. Because when the debts get more, miraculously, the income will be more also. Very difficult test. And in such a way, will continue working. If Chabad depended on having balanced books, as we would never get anything done. And now the Rebbe says, but if you don't think so much about your debts, then there's no end about how much you can do. Of course, like we say, not to be crazy. It has to be a normal thing. You have to have a really normal plan. It says this will eventually add more and more light until it'll be that all of the debts will be all returned, and all the debts that he had will all be filled. Or wird sich schon einkehren und azoi zu reinlegdigen sei. He says eventually he'll take care of all the debts. So he'll be able to pay all the debts off. Even though he was always a debtor, he always had debts. He says, eventually it'll be okay. You don't have to have mercy on a Rebbe. You don't have to make less debt in order that there should be less expenses, in order that the debt should be smaller. It's better that there should be a big debt. The main thing is that you should do what the Rebbe wants in actuality. And the Rebbe finished and said, I'm not talking about just to tell other people to do this, but what, in order to have an effect on other people, as that words have to come from the heart. And you should actually do it yourself. You yourself should be in such, and by means of this, you can also bring others that minei ubei yitkales ila, that in itself will be tremendous success. So what's the Rebbe saying? The Rebbe is saying a chassid doesn't pay so much attention to the world. Of course, he's not crazy. He's not, but he has a clear goal, what he wants to do. The goal is an actual one. And he fills the goal. What about the debts that he's going to incur? That's God's business. God will take care of the debts. And even though you're always going to be in debt, but nevertheless, if you're doing holy things and you're sure that they're holy, is that the debts will be filled. You should know that money is one of the biggest causes of a person being unfaithful to himself. It's called bribery. It says bribery makes there's a sentence in the Torah, it says that makes the wise foolish and makes the righteous crooked. Now, the people that the Torah declares about them, that they're wise and that they're righteous, but nevertheless money can make a person crooked, even the smallest amount. And so it is also debts. Says the Rebbe, makes the worst outcome of all, that you don't do what God wants you to. God wants Judaism should be spread, it should be increased. And because of money, you don't increase Judaism, you don't spread it out. Not a good thing. Therefore, what's the Rebbe saying? Have good ideals, do them, and forget about your worries, forget about the debts. If your ideas are really holy, of course, take advice to see what you're doing is, and that you can handle it. Then God will take care of the debts and everything will be all right. God bless you all. Have a good Shabbos. Oh, we're going to do Yom Yom. What happened? What happened? How did this happen? Yeah. I guess it's only on the other one that this works. Okay. My father writes in one of his mimer, fatness of the body can come from spiritual pleasure. Can. Usually it comes from overeating or a glandular disorder. But fatness can also come from spiritual pleasure, delight derived from serving God. They say that Rabbi Nachum of Chernobyl, that he was very heavy, became corpulent, means fat, by saying, Amen Yehishmei Rabba Mavorach. This made him fat. He got so much pleasure by saying, may God's name be great, Amen Yehishmei Rabba, that this actually made him fat. Have a good day. God bless you all, and see you on Sunday, 8:15 in the morning. Even though we'll see, maybe on Sunday we'll only have a half class because it's a fast day on Sunday. But there will be a class, God willing, on Sunday morning. Maybe I'll make both classes. We'll see. But 8:15 in the morning, there will be a class, Lakuti Torah, and also SIcha of the Rebbe. Shalom, Uvracha, and Shabbat Shalom with Moshiach now.
Have a good Shabbos, Rebbe.
Good Shabbos, Herschel. Great to hear you.